Hey everybody, it's Hierarchical here at Bosnia Agile Day 2018. I am with Jasmina Nikolic. Yes, definitely so. So please, great. Jasmina gave an awesome keynote, or gave a talk earlier on about Agile culture, but before we get into that, I'm going to ask Jasmina to introduce herself. So,
well, I'll do it exactly as I did at the talk. That I like to define myself somewhere in the liminal space in between the natural sciences and the social sciences.
Okay.
So I actually I teach at the university.
Okay.
I teach at the University of Belgrade. I teach at the University of Barcelona. I teach Agile culture. There's masters, but I also teach machine translation, for example.
Right, okay.
So there is a lot of, like a polymath.
Right, okay.
And I do coach many organizations, so that's what I do most of the time. I coached over probably 30-something in the last 9 years. So I consider myself, and I like to call myself, Agile organizational developer.
Right, okay.
And I might change that to something else anytime soon.
So let's just unpack a few things that you just mentioned there. So you spoke about Agile culture. For those who are watching right now, like, what does that mean?
Well, actually, it's very simple, because the culture itself has its own definition, and it's a system of values, beliefs that are shared within one culture cycle, meaning a group of people.
Okay.
And the system that governs the behaviors.
Okay.
So if you see it like that, and you know that the agility itself is defined as 4 values, 12 principles, like a system of values, then it's really easy to conclude that the Agile culture would be Agile values shared by a group of people working together. And when I say shared, I mean everybody understands what the values are, and there's a common understanding of what the proper behavior would be in that culture cycle.
So how do you deal with the challenge that actually sometimes it's a bit like what Jeff Patton, I always remember the circle and the triangle, and that people say, oh yeah, we're talking about the same thing, but later on it's like, whoa, we surely didn't. How do you overcome that in regards to values? Because some people might say, oh yeah, we've got trust, or we've got transparency.
I understand.
How do you
it's very hard, but actually I find it not harder than refining or clarifying or decomposing product backlog, because you see, with the agility, we managed to go deep into acceptance criteria and to define the requirements at the level of the almost automated acceptance criteria, given that, So actually the same process you could follow for the culture. You just need to be careful when you try and decompose the value, which is a word, like the integrity or the openness, by asking people, what does that mean to you? That you slice it down, chunk it down into concrete behavior in a concrete situation. But a very concrete one, like individual behavior for a very specific situation. So I like to say it's you describe it at a level of senses.
Right,
what is the level of mistakes you're going to tolerate, for example, on this team? What is because you have to talk about for example, people like to think about themselves that are exceptional, and the team is, thriving to, like very, very successful.
Okay.
So if the success is the value, if the productivity is the value, so then what does it mean?
Okay.
Can we make mistakes? And if yes, how many?
Okay.
What type of a mistake?
Okay.
And then you go back into analyzing some very concrete situations. Like that you have them a lot, so you use them to talk about, is this acceptable, and to what level? And then you end up with a list of concrete behaviors that form your culture. And really you can forget then about, the words, openness and focus, because what you have is something much more palpable and actionable. And if you think about the culture in terms of iterative, also an increment, you know, it's something, the culture of building the culture of changing it all the time, and finding what works the best for the given context and the given moment. Then you have the cultural agility also embedded in a team. It's not complicated, really not.
It's not, but it's like most things, right? Well, this is my view of most things, especially from an agile perspective. Some things are simple but not easy, right?
Exactly.
Especially when you're dealing with human beings. And when you was talking there, it was kind of like, so it was a bit like a lot of the times when we hear fail fast, fail early, right? But it sounds like in that context, well, we need to define what does failure look like in this context. Yeah, what do we mean? So, you know, when we talk about failure, what's acceptable failure, what's not acceptable failure? When we talk about early, what are we talking about? So that everyone's got some clarity in terms of how they approach that, and we've got a shared view on it. Okay, so also you shared an example of somebody saying that if they've got a team and there's some people not following their values, how they should deal with it. And then you made a very interesting point where actually, if you've got people who are together but do not have the shared values, then you can argue that actually they're not even a team yet.
Yeah.
So how do you roll that back to actually help them to become a team before they can even start?
Well, actually, it's really important to understand that. I mean, you can say, you know, you can fake it. You know, you can say, aha, this is our team. But it will work as a team, meaning it will produce substantial outcome as a team only and when the team really shares values and beliefs.
Yes.
So only when they really understand what's important and what's allowed, you know, and what's like, we better stop doing this.
What's acceptable.
Exactly. So if you have a person that not only doesn't share the values, but doesn't share this basic value, I don't think it's valuable to share the values.
Right, gotcha. Your baseline is...
That's then, you know, that's, you know for sure that you can't, I mean, it's not okay even for that person, you know, because they don't want to do that. It's okay. They just don't want to belong there. So you have to respect that. And of course it's not good for the team, because they will struggle all the time with something they can't possibly change.
How would you approach that, also taking into consideration system thinking? So as you rightfully spoke about earlier on, sometimes what we see as the behavior, we can put an interpretation behind it, but there could be any number of things behind it. Like it might be the environment, it might be personal life circumstances, it might be capabilities issues, it could be any number of things. What would be a good way to approach it in a way that's not detrimental to the team, but also doesn't just write off the individual and make an assumption based on cognitive bias?
You know, caring is fine. I mean, you can care about it. Caring about people is fine. And then you have these conversations are also, you have to respect the limits also, you know.
Okay.
So you have to, but you have to be, as an individual, not only a person that knows how to respect the limits of other people, but also how to communicate your own limits.
Okay.
You know, that's very important. And what I find normally that people are not used to explaining assertively. Right. You know, what's the red line? You know, so they take too much, or they just, you know, there's a lot of pressure, and then
okay.
So many variants of not being capable of asserting yourself.
So it sounds like communication effectiveness, emotional intelligence, social ability, and all of those various things combining.
Or if when you simplify it, it's just being aware of, you know, I exist, you exist, and probably we are not capable of sharing everything. Okay. So, you know, the limits, you know, we need to know our limits, and we need to respect them.
Okay, and in sharing that, the last thing that came to me is, actually this is where we start recognizing that Agile and some of the things that we're talking about here don't just exist within the organization. So for example, I can see how that principle could help in marriages, in families, friendships,
of course, absolutely.
Internationally as well.
You know what I find very complicated, and that's also from I have a lot of experience working in education, in public sector, also in politics. I'm an MP.
Okay,
I'm an MP.
You got MPs in Agile also.
Yes, I'm an MP, and I'm an MP from the opposition in my country. So, but it doesn't matter that much. It's the thing that you learn. You know, the hierarchical systems, they are not modern anymore. I mean, there are other systems growing up, and where it's not like the holocracies or it's high performance and self-organization. So I think actually people are becoming more mature, so in general,
Right.
So, and the technology is there, and this deep learning, and I think we will see a lot of changes in terms of how the societies are organized. Because the society, it's also a culture cycle.
Of course, exactly.
It's a culture cycle.
Of course.
And when you change main variables there, such as communication, like newspapers or something else, digital communication, because we are used to communicating through standard media, but it's changing, and it's changing fast. So we are going to have different types of society. And for sure, digital society is not going to look like the literacy society, But what was my point is that I'm used to working with people that come from command control systems, and that's okay because it was useful, in the previous settings.
Yeah.
But then I can see clearly that it fails. It just fails. There's no results. So my question is not just for myself, but the whole Agile community, because we are really tapping into some sort of different societal organization there.
Okay.
What are the new leaders? If it's not command and control, and it's not, and we do need leaders, then they can't be really inspect and adapt. They have to be something else. So let's see what the digital society brings in terms of that. So I'm very curious about it.
Awesome. Well, on a great note to end on, so I'm sure that you've created a lot of value for some of the people listening, and some of them might want to be able to reach out to you, explore further, maybe get you into the organization to help them with the organization.
One thing I forgot, so I started saying this because I wanted to actually highlight one thing, that there is a lot of power abuse.
Of course.
There is a lot of power abuse. When you mentioned, it could be used in families with these setting up the limits and respecting them. Exactly. And then I think that is very helpful in those contexts. Setting up the limits and asserting them.
Great stuff. So I can see that a lot of people are most probably going to want to reach out to you with questions, maybe get you into the organization. How do they contact you?
I want to answer them.
How do you...
Well, it's it's my email, and my Twitter account is Jazila.
Okay.
With double L.
Okay, got that.
And that's how I do it. And then the email is as my name and surname @gmail.com.
Okay.
And yeah, there I have my LinkedIn account. I'm all over the places. So
awesome. Great stuff. Yeah. Well, really want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it for your lovely insights. So thank you so much.
Man.
So there you hear it. Culture, as you're hearing again, and you keep on hearing that, culture is fundamentally key. It's something that we create as a collective. It's something that can evolve. And it's also about within there being able to make sure that we're clear on what we're talking about, and especially when we start looking at the values that we're using to create that culture or team, that we're all very clear in ensuring that we're on the same page. Okay, so it's Ade Shukoya at Bosnia Agile Day 2018 in Sarajevo, and I'll catch you soon.